Hey everyone, so I'm here to do the chapter 422 review and the spoiler discussion, but I kept calling it chapter 421 because I got my numbers mixed up, so I apologize for that. But yeah, 422. Guys, thanks for being here and let's get into it. Hello everyone and welcome to the My Hero Academia chapter 421 review. But honestly, in my heart of hearts, I really just want to talk about the spoilers. I feel like talking about 421, it's kind of a waste of time. But here we are. Apologies for being late, I'm really busy. But I'm here to talk with you. I still think Your Academia is going to end in chapter 430, but with the new spoilers, it's kind of like, honestly, I'm in disbelief. I keep thinking back to what one commenter, White Despair, said that this felt like 421 felt like, yo, this is kind of the end here, isn't it? And I was just like, bro, no, man. Like, we're going to have like one last hurrah for All for One. We gotta. But then you look at, okay. You know, I don't want to spoil, because if you're not a spoiler reader, I don't want to spoil it. We'll go through 421, I believe it's 421, and then we will jump to the next chapter, which is the one coming out on Sunday because we already have the spoilers for it. Alright, everyone, thank you for being here. Very quickly, because I want to get through this chapter quickly, let's talk about the big points for 421. And, you know, when I'm looking at that chapter, I feel really vindicated. I feel like the things I was saying for 420 were correct, largely in what we saw with how Horikoshi used the powers, which we know he was going to express it just by everyone using their one instance of the power. Like I said in the previous video, he does better when he has multiple people because then he gets multiple special effects in there. This chapter also had Ida. I remember Kayla Foster, a commenter, was saying, where did Ida come from? It doesn't really matter where he came from. He just came out of a portal, right? That's all that really matters. But Ida was there. Ida was guaranteed to be there because of Shoto being there. There's really one question mark now, which is Uraraka, given where she shows up in this chapter. Anyway, one thing I found really funny too is that I was talking about like it should be more like the opening for the current season. And in this chapter, you actually have a spot where it's flat out what you got in the opening, which is just indicative of the problem with the Hero Academia power set. There's only so much people can do. And Horikoshi, to his credit, he goes in there and he says it right then and there. Hey, like, bro, these guys, we can't do much more other than launch you. So Shoji and Tsuyu, it's actually really hilarious that they have the exact same bit that they got in the opening. Well, Shoji's technically, he didn't do it at the same time as Tsuyu, but he launched Izuku. To some degree, Horikoshi gives the explanation like, bro, like we can't do this. To be fair, Tsuyu never wanted to be an anti-villain combat hero. She wanted to be a disaster relief hero, and Shoji, he could be anti-combat or he could be anti-villain combat, but at the end of the day, he's a surveillance hero, even though his one opportunity to do that, he kind of failed at that way back when in the summer camp, but, you know, neither here nor there. So with the Hero Academia characters, you know, it's unfortunate, but some of these people aren't meant to be combatants, and they're being forced into being combatants, which makes it just very much harder to make spectacular scenes with them. And the fact that Horikoshi knows this, I think that's what you gotta really respect here. He knows the weaknesses of his series as much as people don't want to talk about the weaknesses. He's probably the one that's the most aware of the weaknesses. One thing that I also want to say, because for some people this chapter might feel kind of boring, it's really just everyone getting Izuku to approach All for One. One thing I always said in the past was that Black Clover had better team play because in Black Clover everything was about getting Asta to approach the villains. And that's pretty much what you see here. Look at all the stuff that had to happen, all the people working together to get Izuku there. This is the most Black Clover-like that My Hero Academia has ever been, and you can see why it's like relatively hard to do, just because everyone has to do something. Mind you, Black Clover has more complicated approaching maneuvers, because those people actually have powers that can do a lot more. Really, like the fate manipulation plus teleporting makes for an actually more visually impressive thing in general with Black Clover, and that author in particular has experience with the approach, but it was really cool to see that as well here. Now, me personally, as a guy who's sold his own books, you know, when I look at this, I can't help but think that this is a victory lap. Like the moment where everyone's saying like, do your best, urging the main character to continue on to like land the final hit. You know, I feel like we've seen this in other anime and manga when people are just all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, they're just saying go or like do it, like blah blah, you know, the filler words. I feel like this is a victory lap. I feel like this is the kind of thing that all authors want to get to. They want to get to that point where everyone's just putting all the cards on the table, they're putting all the chips on Izuku or their main character, and they're going for it. I feel like this is Horikoshi's victory lap, because honestly, him getting here and all these people looking at these guys, and when you have those moments of the characters seeing people they knew you know, the minor characters like pointing out, oh, that's Mina, that's Kirishima, oh, that's Shoji. I think Horikoshi felt something really. I think he felt proud going into this, because this is the victory lap for authors. I think this is what everyone wants to accomplish. I know that when it comes to my series, I always want to have one of these moments. I don't know when exactly in the series I will get to have that moment. I'll try to force it before the finale, but um, you know, I think this is it. And you know, it's called the Izuku Rising chapter. I think this is what it's all about. I think he breathed a sigh of satisfaction after this chapter. Anyway, that's what I want to say. Like, I feel like maybe for readers, this wasn't the most exciting chapter just because it's just a bunch of people getting Izuku close to All for One, but I feel like this was a monumental chapter for Horikoshi. Of course, my bias colors that. Heck, I almost got a little bit choked up talking about everyone like looking at their people they knew as they're trying to do their best here. So let's appreciate a lot of the little things happening here. Here we have Shindo. You know, especially with like the next chapter coming up, I kind of feel a little bit underwhelmed because this is just like a lot of damage to picture. But whatever, it was cool to see, and I got my buddy here. It was cool to see. It was cool to see the minor characters. In this channel, we always talk about the things that we need to see, and one of the things is Class 2A. We got to see Class 2A girl. Now, mind you, if this is the end for it, it wasn't the biggest thing, but like if there was another like checklist item that we had to take off, it was seeing Class 2A pop up here. I do hope that we're going to get more, but again, we'll talk about that in the spoilers. Moving on to page 3. On page 3, we have Shigaraki, All for One, very quickly talking about like what this form actually is, how, I'm not losing control, this is just me exercising control. Honestly, I'm sad that we're not seeing more of Finger Genesis Shigaraki body, you know? I think Finger Genesis is like really interesting. Instead, we're just seeing Quirk Genesis. Now, when we talk about people using their powers to help out Izuku, here we have Hagakure coming in to like redirect the laser. Again, very good moment, a very good showcase, very flashy. We have the railgun. Personally, I don't think that Momo needed to make Kaminari be the source, but I appreciate it. Unfortunately, we know good old All for One body is actually capable of handling railguns pretty well. We have our most basic crew come in here and do some smashing. Just to get things out of their way. Of course, they're just saying, like, again, these guys are just the parade of getting Izuku to the location, but it's cool to see them get to do something. I wish they all could have gotten a chance to punch All for One, but hey, maybe we'll still get that. Now, this is what I was referring to here with the part from the opening. In the opening, Shoji launches Izuku. In the opening, Tsuyu catches Izuku with her tongue to, like, launch him forward. You know, if you were to ask me, I don't think the anime staff knew that this was what was coming. I think it's possible Horikoshi knew what the storyboard for the anime opening was going to be, and maybe he's like putting a little bit of a reference to that. But it's also very likely that because there's not very many options for these people to like actually work with, that this is just where it all it naturally could have come about that these guys had the same idea. And of course, like, you know, I always talk about Horikoshi being a paranoid guy. When you see a moment like this, where Shoji's flat out saying, we don't have enough, we don't got the power to be weaving in between these attacks, right? You know, that's the biggest proof of Horikoshi saying, like, yeah, this is all they can really do, but they're gonna do their best wherever they can, like, help where needed. Special mention to Mineta here, because Mineta is the one that I think he hasn't really done much, man. Like, poor guy. I think this is one of my favorite moments where Ida shows up to give Izuku the boost. It's amazing. I think, like, this is really good. Like, it's sad that Ochako's not here just because so many other people get a moment where they help Izuku along. And I do like the ultimate idea that Izuku's weakness is what made this a different situation than All Might. In the sense that people came to help Izuku. It's an interesting distinction. I think Horikoshi he had to force this. He kind of had to make he had to ascribe some kind of virtue to Izuku's vulnerability. And in this case, it's that people are wanting to help Izuku. But honestly, at this point, I think everyone's helping each other. Like, I still think it's good. I think it's better to have this than not to have it. So one thing I want to say about the segment coming up where we see All Might is that we don't see Bakugo here, even though he should be in the area, and that was very interesting. Like, before seeing the spoilers, I would have told you like 100% I think Bakugo's still showing up. I told you like in the last chapter when Shoto showed up, I think he's showing up. But this is one of those moments where it would have been a little bit of a push toward the direction. On this page too, we also see that All for One's holes in his hand are also still bleeding. Now the next sequence of pages is people just telling Izuku to do his best. It's just a rallying cry. Nothing really too important here, other than the whole thing about All Might setting up that Izuku became his hero that day. Blah blah blah. And then we see Izuku rising. Awesome. So at this point, before seeing the spoilers, I would have told you next week I think we're going into Vestige World. And when I say going into Vestige World, I mean immediately that punch was going to be the one that just takes us directly to Vestige World. Overall, for chapter 421, before I continue, I want to say, like I said, I think it's a victory lap for Horikoshi. I think he's really proud of the work he's done here. I think this is what most authors want to accomplish at some point. Like, the moment where everyone is saying, do your best or go and, like, beat up the enemy. I think that we've seen that across many passionate light novels. I think we see it everywhere. I think this is a goal. I think this is a goal that Horikoshi wanted to reach. Now, friends, let us talk about the spoilers. Now, like I was saying before, I had to stop myself there. Had I not seen the spoilers, I would have told you next week we go into Vestige World and somehow we get into like some kind of crazy hand monster so that everyone else can continue doing shit. We can see the zoo guy. I would have told you that. But bros and girls, bruh, I don't know. that the new spoilers have me like a little bit like, So let's go. What I'm gonna do here, I'm just gonna read them because I can't really show them. I get in trouble a lot. I don't want to do that. Also, speaking of spoilers, the Jujutsu Kai spoilers were amazing compared to these ones that just left me confuzzled, you know? Okay, so beginning the read. The chapter begins with All For One saying that he found it weird that their regeneration wasn't healing his body. In addition to that, each hero's hostility came together to confuse Danger Sense and hide Izuku's presence. So, the thing with that is, like, do you need Danger Sense when you can see Izuku coming right at you? Like, what do you mean it hid Izuku's presence? You were launching stuff right at him the entire time. I think that's a little bit messy. I think, like, your eyes still work, All For One. And what isn't All For One the man that has, like, multiple sensory quirks to, like, be able to see that? So I think that's a little bit silly, but it's a cool visual. Okay, then we go into this part that it shows that this body is exhausted and his mental state has never been worse due to Yoichi's death. Izuku remembers All Might saying that One For All would make a weak body explode and tells All For One that he directly received the power cultivated by 9 users. Okay, so this is where, like, things get really anticlimactic for me. You know, back when we were having the World Cup, FIFA, I'm pretty sure it was the World Cup. I remember that there was a journalist that all of a sudden died, and people thought that it was foul play. But then I found out, like, apologies if I misremember it. It was an aneurysm. And one thing that stuck out with me was that commenters had called it, yes, God's kill switch. You know, sometimes something just goes off in your head and you dead. Alright? And this is what this kind of feels like. It kind of feels like Horikoshi had a kill switch that he could activate at any time. The justification that we get here, that his body's exhausted, his mental state has never been worse due to Yoichi's death. I'm just thinking, like, okay, but this is the body that does shit without you even wanting it to. It's the body that tries to always become better. Are you saying that this scientifically augmented body has a limit? Because I thought, like, the whole point of this body was to not have a limit. So to me, it kind of just, and mind you, I'm 100% biased because I had my ideas about what I thought was going on, and there's definitely that bias is getting in there. But with the way that body was set up, like, this whole time there was an arbitrary kill switch that just when the body is exhausted, it just suddenly stops working. And it's like, what's the point of all these what's the point of this augmentation in order to make the perfect body to be able to withstand stuff? And then just, like, but you gotta remember, the regen was very difficult to deal with, and his quirks aren't shut down. It's just everything's not working anymore, and it's like, why? It feels anticlimactic. It just feels like this doesn't make sense. Like, where's finger genesis? Why aren't we just generating a whole mass of fingers? Like, and look, Shigaraki's state was in constant flux because he was fighting like 5 different battles all at once, one inside. He had a whole, remember that moment where he was generating clones of his family? So I'm just looking at this and it's like, it just feels like this is an arbitrary kill switch. It kind of makes me feel like things are a little bit rushed. Again, though, could be biased, probably biased. But that's my feeling when I saw this. And then Izuku talking about, yo, One For All, I pounded it into him, a weak body will explode. And tells All For One that he directly received the power cultivated by 9 users. I'm like, but bro, what are you talking about? All For One has a perfect body. Shigaraki's body is perfect. It evolves. It evolved to generate a mouth to spit out poison. What are you talking about? This is a weak body. Other thing, One For All isn't always active. I don't think All For One is using One For All right now. One for All isn't always active. Izuku wasn't walking around making craters all the time and breaking his legs all the time. He had to specifically activate that. So I look at that, and like Izuku was doing that from day one. So I look at that, I'm thinking like that. This just feels arbitrary. Anyway, All for One's body begins to crumble, and some of the heroes start to think the fight is over. And I'm thinking like, why is it crumbling? Why is it crumbling? What even happened here? Like, it's just his body gave out. His body could have given out at any other point. Like, you're telling me it's because of like his men again. You know, it just feels arbitrary. It feels like God pulled the kill switch. Anyway, All for One uses various quirks to keep himself together. He says that he hasn't achieved anything yet and that he can't die because Demon Lord is absolute and he has to fulfill his dream. He says that he has to start all over again like he did with Shigaraki. In other words, he just needs to transfer the All for One quirk to Midoriya or some other hero and take over their body, which, you know, if we're going to 430, we might still have some chapters left. I really don't know if this is actually the end of Hero Academia. I haven't seen anyone post anything about that. Anyway, in a very surprising turn of events, we have Kurogiri moving. Everyone's shouting out for him. And Kurogiri says he needs to protect Tomura Shigaraki. So like one last hurrah to like really show what Kurogiri is all about here. Shirakumo opens a portal between Deku and All for One. President Mike cries, saying that Shirakumo always reaches out to those who need help. Shirakumo says All for One gives Shigaraki back. His friends are waiting for him to return. Which, you know, I honestly expected this to happen. I expected that we would see this, and then, you know, you have Toga and all of them calling out. So I'm happy that we got some variation of it. But like always, Horikoshi does some kind of twist here. Then we see Kurogiri starts to disappear at the last second. But then we have Bakugo appearing. He propels Izuku forward with his explosions. And honestly, with the way that Bakugo comes in there, it kind of is reminiscent of the opening again. Anyway, Mike yells that Bakugo should be in the hospital, but he flew here with the quirk. Bakugo says that Shoto made an ice ramp for him to get up there. And then he says, be careful or else I'll end up surpassing Izuku. Izuku says that he'll never forgive All for One. And then we go in and then Izuku says that he's not an incomprehensible monster or a demon lord. Deep down, he's just a very lonely man. Izuku lands another punch, and then we see All for One standing alone in Vestige World. Here in Vestige World, All for One talks to a flame that represents Yoichi. He says that Izuku's last punch transferred the last ember of One for All, that is, the last fragments of Yoichi, the quirk itself. All for One says that he doesn't care about that, he just wants to see Yoichi's fate. And then we get a really cool panel where Yoichi says that he failed to take his brother in the right direction, but now Izuku's allowing both Shigaraki brothers to finally rest. All for One starts shouting, saying that he won't allow it and that he loves Yoichi and needs him by his side. So like nice that like we got that situation cleared up there. And Yoshi says it's time for All for One to pay for the crime of using so many people and that they're not alone in that realm. Just so you see what I'm dealing with here all the time. And don't worry, I'm gonna catch him. But yeah, that's what we deal with here at the studio. Anyway, we see all the One for All users plus Shigaraki come out of the shadows, and in time with Izuku, they land at the attack on All for One's vestige, both from the outside and the inside. We then go into a segment where All for One's vestige disappears and Izuku and Shigaraki touch hands. Shigaraki says that he thought he had been completely swallowed by All for One this time, but Nana's vestige connected with him and prevented him from disappearing. So this is another thing where I just feel like it was rushed, because I feel like this would have been a whole thing where if we had been taking our time, we could have gotten like a whole segment of these guys infiltrating the bottom. But yo, like White Despair, you know, I was talking about this. And remember how I was saying it last time? You know, he disappeared, but the situation happened. So if you were following the videos, you knew that this was one of the things I was expecting. So not surprising that we got it here. What's more surprising is how it was handled. And just that it happened off screen. And honestly, like, that's unfortunate, because Nana meeting Shigaraki himself, that would have been another really strong moment. Kind of wish that the Vestige Ghost got an opportunity to like say something to All for One other than just punch him into oblivion. Okay, he then says Kurogiri, and we see the last bits of him. He says that even though he briefly got it, he didn't manage to destroy anything. Izuku was right. Deep inside, he was just a crying boy, and he couldn't, and that's why he couldn't destroy Izuku's hands. That part I don't understand, because Shigaraki did succeed in destroying Izuku's hands, or like, you know, like those hands were destroyed. Anyway, Izuku says he continued to fight because he couldn't believe what Shigaraki had done, but also because he wanted him to stop. He wanted the sadness to be over. Okay, we're almost done here. Sorry for that. Izuku Midoriya, if Spinner's still alive... So Shigaraki then tells Izuku that if Spinner's still alive, to tell him this. Shigaraki fought to destroy until the very end. So this was really interesting, because this is one of the things we asked. Like, was Shigaraki just going to double down? He doubled down to a degree. Izuku says that he managed to destroy what he really needed to. And then last page goes back to the real world and reveals Shigaraki's body has been completely destroyed and turned into dust. And then we get a break next week. So honestly, guys, I am completely just underwhelmed here. I can't believe that this is actually happening. I feel like we still have something else. Like, All For One said he wanted to transfer his quirk into someone else. Did he do that? Or did the annihilation of the vestiges manage to take him out? I don't know. But this was surprising to me. I want to know what you guys think down below if you have any opinions about it. Oh, just doing a hardcore fight now with the bird. The fight is ongoing. I better catch him because he's gonna fall. Very interesting. Like, if you were to ask me what I think is gonna happen, and you gotta like take into account that I'm just very biased here. I don't think this is over. I think we still have 7 chapters. We got to see Bakugo here, which was like a solid prediction to say like Bakugo's gonna be here, but the other part of that is like Ochako. I feel like Ochako has to be here somehow. So until I see Ochako, I'm not going. And if we're talking about things that we still need to see, I think until I see the protagonist from the Zoo series, I don't think we're done. But they might just be here next week as part of the cleanup brigade, you know, or the next chapter. Yeah, team. If we were to talk about like how is All For One gonna come back, I would say like, I don't know, maybe he just manages to go into Izuku and is able to come back as a giant hand monster. Like maybe he did manage to transfer his quirk to Izuku, but like that would, honestly, you could end it here, I think, because like the thing is, we all know this is gonna end with Izuku being in a good spot, so why go another 3 chapters of fighting? Like the choreography isn't even that interesting. All Might in the chapter for 421 said that he wants to keep losses at a minimal level. We couldn't even lose the Americans. So when there's nothing at stake and all you can really get is a few more character moments, like why even bother, right? Would it be nice if Dobby got a last hurrah and Toga got a last hurrah? Yeah, definitely. But if it's just going to end with Izuku winning anyway, you know, why go through the motions of it? But now, if this is actually the end, like this is going to be epilogue chapters. So in terms of other things that I'm feeling, if we were just to talk about, if this is the end here, I'm thinking like, okay, for Izuku, is this it? Is he never going to have a quirk? Or is he going to become Iron Might? Or are we going to pull some movie 2 shenanigan and have like Banjo and some others come back to stick with Izuku for a period of time? I mean, they're ghosts. Destroying the physical body, where do the ghosts go? I mean, like with All For One, we kind of just saw that they faded away here, but like, do they, the one for all quirk, according to movie 2, can decide when it wants to go back to Izuku. So are we gonna go back here? Yeah. Is All For One gonna get into the water supply and just reemerge? And then you gotta really ask like Tenko, like Izuku failed to save Tenko. Are we gonna have any kind of conversation about that? That'd be pretty cool if we just have Izuku come down to like, yeah, All For One took advantage of him, and I had no choice but to kill All For One and take Tenko along with it. That's a pretty dark note to end on. Yeah, no, like again, I'm very excited to see what exactly Horikoshi wants to do here on the dismount. And you know, talking about 422. Yeah, man. It really did make me feel like, wow, it really was a victory lap. Anyway, guys, that's it for me. We'll have a proper review maybe next week, and yeah, till next time. I hope you have an absolutely great day. Thanks for sticking around and watching these reviews. Who knows? I still think Hero Academia is over in 4:30, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, till next time. I hope you have an absolutely great day.